there's a definite difference between doing more of something or because you're good at it and doing more of something because you enjoy it. Your values are a compass as to, where you're going to go in life. I think if you are listening to this conversation and you are really struggling, is that the first thing you need to do is
Hello, Protrusive. I'm Jazz Galati, and welcome back to your favorite dental podcast. This is the interference cast, like the non-clinical arm, but a very important arm of the podcast. One of the things that Andrea mentioned is that when she was studying in dental school, that's what it was all about. It was just about studying and becoming a dentist and passing your exams. And I resonated with that so much because our date was 6th of June. I knew that on 6th of June, 2013, we were going to get our results. And I could not imagine life beyond 6th of June. Like, it was all about, am I going to become a dentist? This is what I've been building up my last sort of 8 to 9 years to do. Like, I wanted to be a dentist since I was 14, but I couldn't even think about the future and what it will actually be like to be a real dentist in the real world. Now, fast forward so many years, I have a lot of real world insight and I'd love to share it with you today along with Andrea. I love people like Andrea because they are all about helping us feel fulfilled in dentistry. There are plenty of people out there who perhaps dentistry didn't go the way they planned. They leave and now they want to coach you on your exit plan, which I understand. But what I don't believe in is making permanent decisions based on temporary feelings and actually attempting to figure out exactly how to make dentistry work for you. Now, some things I didn't discuss in the conversation with Andrea because she was on a roll and I wanted to give her the space and time to talk about all the wonderful things, including the latter part, the end of the podcast, whereby she actually gives real techniques. It's about 5 techniques she shares to help you feel more fulfilled from dentistry. But one thing I want to just talk about while I have this opportunity in the intro is the following. Have you actually put pen to paper to write down what does your ideal day actually look like? Like, you're actually allowed to have an ideal day. Have you thought about it? I didn't do this until a few years ago, and it made a big difference to my clarity of thinking and where I want to take my career. And the other one, of course, is what does your ideal week look like? Once you've decided what your ideal day and ideal week looks like, then make that your goal. That's your aim. Why wouldn't you make some decisions right now to make your ideal day and your ideal week become a reality? For example, because I think examples really help. I am someone who, if I don't exercise at least 3 or 4 times a week, I don't feel like I'm living to my truest value. I become grumpy. I don't feel like I'm enjoying my life as much as I could be. And so I know in my ideal week, I need that. Now, I've had a few years in my career where that wasn't happening, especially when we were building OBAB. That was such a huge project. I had to wrongly sacrifice some health for that, but now I'm back on track. And so slotting that into the ideal week for me is really important, and you make it work. And you make some key life decisions and something that you do with your significant other. You decide that you design your perfect life. How do you actually want it to look like? Where you're going to live? What gym membership I will have to make sure this all happens. And so it's about living a life of purpose, allowing you to live to your truest values. And that was just one example of me making sure that I design my ideal day and my ideal life to make sure I get to go to the gym 3 to 4 times a week. Another thing that was important to me is I'm not good at multitasking. I think most of us aren't, right? And we shouldn't be multitasking. It's better to focus on one thing. And I'm particularly bad. And sometimes I get distracted and I feel really overwhelmed easily. And so when I'm in clinical mode, I'm in clinical mode. And because I love my clinical dentistry, it's not a big deal for me to do a 12-hour shift. I know it's not for everyone, but I'm more than happy to do an 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. if it means I can work less days, right? So for me, that made perfect sense that I have a really long Monday and now I don't have to work a Thursday anymore, for example. And this has only just come to fruition. It's something that we agreed on about a year ago, and then we had to wait for my Thursday patients to diminish, if you'd like, and now I've really consolidated my clinical days. This allows me to be in the zone on Monday. And whilst I don't get to see my kids much on a Monday, I get to make up for it on the other days because now 3 days a week I get to do either a school drop-off or a pickup or both. And the main point of sharing this detail with you, my friend, is that everything I'm trying to do is with great intention, it's on purpose, and it's by design. And it doesn't happen overnight. It actually took a discovery process first, and then you put your action plan, and you relentlessly chase that. And that ideal week may look different for everyone. But if you don't decide what your ideal day or ideal week looks like, then you'll never get it, right? If you don't know where you're going, how do you know when you'll get there? All right, that's quite enough of my rambling. I'll catch you in the outro. Enjoy this podcast with Andrea. So, Dr. Andrea Ogden, it is absolutely a pleasure to have you on Protrusive Dental Podcast. How are you?
I'm very well, and I'm very excited to be here. So thank you so much for the invitation to come and talk to you today.
For those of you listening on Spotify, Apple, Andrea's well, it's a sunny, beautiful day today in the UK for once, and Andrea's looking bright and vibrant, and that would really, I think, be a great descriptor of some of the content I'm seeing from you, Andrea, right? And the top word I'd probably say is relatable. I reached out to you because I'm loving what you're putting out to the universe. So much of the podcast over the last 6 years has been, I mean, our tagline is fall in love with dentistry again. Okay. And I'm very much, when I do some speaking, I say, find your niche, find a way and fight for it to make dentistry work for you. Right. And everything you're putting out there is just, I'm loving it. And I think we can learn so much from you. And often with these kind of episodes, Andrea, I get so many messages saying, you know what, I really need that. And that's what I want everyone to achieve. And so to start with, Andrea, I want to learn about your journey, because you do reference your journey a lot in your posts and stuff. And I think you got a really interesting one. So can we start with that, Andrea, and tell us about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I think if I am going to talk about my journey, it's hard to kind of think, well, actually, where do we start? And the reality is that I probably need to go back all those years to when I filled out that UCAS form when I was doing my A levels, and I filled out those 4 places for picked for random dental schools. I didn't really put a lot of thought into it. Just was like, no, I really want to be a dentist. It's the only way I'm going to be happy and I'm going to find fulfillment and achieve my potential. I sent the UCAS form off, and I didn't even get a single interview. So I was like, oh, so I didn't even, it wasn't like I got rejected. Like I didn't, not offered a place. Like they didn't even want to interview me. So I think when I look back at the fact that happened, and I went and did a degree in human biology and then applied again and was successfully offered a place. But I suspect, in fact, I know that failure right at the beginning definitely played a part in many years while I was at dental school. There was definitely this fear of failure, that I might not make it, that I wasn't going to graduate, that I might get thrown out. And I mean, looking back, that was crazy because I passed all the exams, but that fear was definitely there. And so for many years, it was all about becoming a dentist rather than giving much thought into what it would be like once I became a dentist. And so, that plus the fact that I don't come from a medical or a dental background, I don't have anybody to mentor me or explain the realities. I did a bit of work experience, and obviously, you learn stuff while you're at dental school, but I had, no idea. And I think, looking back at that time at dental school, I don't have any memory of getting any careers advice or even being given any kind of skills about the opportunities that are available to you once you have a dental degree. So when I graduated, I think I was just kind of like, oh, okay, so now I'm going to do what everybody else does, which I'm going to go and do. Well, it was vocational training when I did it. And then I got myself a nice little associate job. And I really thought that
MFDS and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, did all of that. It was tick box exercise.
Yes.
Everybody does this. I must do this. And I really thought that, well, if you're a successful dentist, then you won't practice. So I needed to acquire the skills that you need to manage a business, which you weren't taught at dental school. So I was like, okay, so this is the plan. This is what I'm going to do. And there were definitely a couple of key pivotal moments. The first one I remember when I was an associate, probably a few years in as an associate, and I just had that moment where I was like, is this it? Is this what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my working life? Being in this one room, working with a nurse and the patient, and then I just had this sense that I had so many more skills and potential that I hadn't tapped into, and that clinical work in general practice alone was not going to enable me to do that and to grow in those things. The second thing was when I had an offer accepted to buy a practice. And at the time, I had a 7-month-old baby. I remember this moment so clearly. I was driving down the road with my 7-month-old baby in the back of the car, and it just hit me how much additional responsibility I was about to take on. My husband's not a dentist, my family aren't dentists. There was that moment where I was like, hang on a minute, just stop and think about this. This might not be the right choice for you. Why are you doing this? Are we just ticking boxes because you think this is what you should do rather than what you actually want to do or need to? Just take some time to think about it. And that really did those 2 moments definitely set off a chain of reactions, chain of events that made me evaluate not just what I want out of my career, but what I want out of my life.
Andrea, what did you go ahead and buy that practice in the end, or did you make a decision that actually this isn't for you after all?
Yeah, no, I made a decision that this wasn't for me. I think the sale was likely to fall through anyway. We were literally at the very early stages. And then, something came up with, bank valuation and all that kind of stuff that I was like, actually, no, this is my chance to get out. This is not the right decision for me at this time. Let's just stop and let's just think about this. And, and take some time and work out where it is that we're going to go from here.
Have you read the book, The E-Myth, or the dental version of The E-Myth?
No, I haven't, but I'm going to make a note of that so I can definitely read it up today.
There's so many things that you're saying there, because it argues, like, for example, yes, let's apply it to dentistry, but like one step back, like, for example, several steps back, and not even related to dentistry, but like it gives an example in the generic book, E-Myth Revisited. It gives an example of someone who just loves baking, right? They're just amazing at baking. And then everyone says, look, you need to sell your goods, right? Your baking is the best, you need to sell. And then eventually she opens a shop, and then she's there like 5 a.m., right? Baking and stuff. And then she's there serving customers. And then it grew and it grew. And then eventually she's not baking anymore. She's just doing the account. She's managing people. She's doing this. And the thing that she was in love with, right, which is the baking, she was no longer doing anymore. And so that is like the technician. Then we also have the manager and the entrepreneur. So these are 3 different roles. And as dentists, we get shoehorned into playing all these 3 roles. As a business owner, you're like the entrepreneur. You also become a manager. And then you're also a technician. You still have to do the implants, still have to do the orthodontics. You still have to do what is very challenging work. And this can be a real source of burnout and stress, because you're trying to wear so many hats and everything is like brand new. And like you, Andrea, like I think very few people are fortunate enough to have clear mentorship, whether it's family or close colleagues that they can rely on. A lot of people are just making up as they go along. And that's scary. So what did you do thereafter when you decided that, okay, a really good judgmental moment for you, really good insight that you had, potentially a good insight, where you decided that this isn't for me? How did you pivot from there?
I think the first thing I looked at was, what was it that I really enjoyed in dentistry? And I got into teaching very early on, because my first associate job was in a foundation training practice. So the FD was often coming in, I wasn't their trainer, but they'd often come in for a chat. I'd help them get bits of teeth out, find canals, and I got a kick out of it. I realized quite early on that, to be part of somebody's journey is a huge privilege. And even if you're just a teeny tiny bit. So I think, that was always kind of there. And I thought, actually, no, I need to do more of this. I'd done my postgraduate certificate in dental education. I applied to be an educational supervisor in my own right. And then actually it was that was kind of already going on in the background. And it was that moment actually after being in the car with my eldest that I was like, okay, we need to look at how we can take this further. And around the same time, there was a job that came up to be a training program director in the east of England. And I didn't think I was going to get it, but I was like, I have to apply for this. Like, this is, we have to see where this can go. And, that was at that point, that was definitely, the biggest pivot, because that changed my working week. I went from being 5 days as a clinical associate to actually doing 3 days, and then 2 days was involved with foundation training. And I think that kind of initial variety, that increased variety in the week, and actually having to learn all the different skills of working, within a much wider team and managing budgets and dealing with the trainers and the FDs, there was all these skills that I didn't realize that actually I didn't know. I had to acquire those and learn quite quickly. And I was like, I really enjoy learning stuff. I think most dentists do. That's what, you sign up to a lifelong commitment of continued learning. So it's like, okay, so let's, this is something else I hadn't realized about myself. How can we do that? So it was definitely, I think, as you said, most dentists, they don't know. And it is this kind of trial and error. And just,
I think that's okay, Andrea, because I think it's important to have, you need to trial. I always say you need to kiss a lot of frogs before you find your Prince Charming. And in the context of finding out what your niche is, or finding out if you should specialize or not, or finding out what kind of career you want to have. And sometimes you need to figure out that actually I've done enough endo to realize I don't enjoy this, and actually I really enjoy digital dentistry, like whatever it could be. Like they get a kick out of doing the lab side, they get a kick out of CEREC. In contrast to you, like you felt as though that this is not for you to do it, for the next few decades and to do it in that room with the nurse, whereas other people get a kick out of 6 days a week working in that room, and they just love their clinical, tiny details of dentistry, whereas other people feel like they just want a variety in the week like you. So is that what your week looks like now, Andrea?
Yeah, my week is incredibly varied now. I think because after I finished working as a training program director, I joined the BDA as a member of their staff. Ultimately, that's really the amount of things, different types of things that I do during the week, whether that is giving talks to foundation dentists or students, whether that is project work. I still work clinically as a dentist. It's for me, variety was always, a key thing that I wanted to tap into. I just, but like you say, for many people, it's if they absolutely love doing that clinical work, then that's what's right for you. The point is that we're all different, and it's about understanding who you are and what makes you tick, and why it is that you wanted to do dentistry in the first place, and how can you enable that. And you're going to learn stuff about yourself throughout, along the way. Like, I didn't realize that I liked teaching when I started doing dental school. That was the last thing I thought about. But so you discover these things that you're like, okay, well, that's good. Like, how can I do that a little bit more? But I think probably one thing I probably need to mention is I often hear people say, oh, you need to find out what your strengths are. Like, let's say you're good at root canals, like you should do more root canals. I suppose like the baking analogy that you were talking about, but there's a definite difference between doing more of something or because you're good at it, and doing more of something because you enjoy it. Because you can be good at something but not necessarily enjoy it, and therefore that's not necessarily a strength. So I think the two have to come hand in hand.
I think usually they do, but there are instances where they don't. But I think sometimes you become good at something because you enjoy it, and then you follow that path, and then that's the ultimate. You're in a very privileged position, Andrea, in the sense that you've touched the lives of many trainees. You've had to influence, to mold them, to support them, and that's a really special thing to do. What have you learned from that experience in terms of what are the struggles? What's the plight of the young dentists nowadays? What kind of, in what ways are they, some of them potentially feeling not so fulfilled? What's keeping them up at night? What would you say to our colleagues listening and watching right now that might be relatable, kind of like the content that you're posting out? What are the main challenges we face as dentists?
Well, I think, there's two main challenges that people have after they've graduated, and particularly after they've finished foundation training. And the first one I think it's a very similar experience to what I had, is that if you don't have the information about career options, you do end up just doing what you think you should. I mean, when we look at people that go into dental school, we're high academic achievers. The vast majority of people have kind of gone through A-levels, then they've gone into dental school, and it's all mapped out. So if you do very well at your A-levels and you apply to dentistry and you're successful, then you progress to year one, and then you pass your exams and you progress to year two, and so on and so on. And then you do foundational vocational training, and then all of a sudden, unless you do DCT and specialty training,
which is why so many do it, Andrea. I think so many are doing it because they feel like, well, this just seems like a path, and therefore I should do it, not with any sort of real conviction or enjoyment of it, or actually a desire to do it, other than I think this is the next step because it kind of is a path that's already been made, but it's not necessarily your path. And then some people do it because they're afraid to go into practice, and they're afraid of the big bad world out there.
Yeah, I think that can definitely be a factor, especially because you're going to get more support. whereas you don't necessarily know you're going to get that continued support in practice. I think that is a huge jump, to go from that structure to that autonomy that you have. I mean, it's hugely exciting, the fact that you are in control, you make the decisions as to where you want to take your career, which postgraduate training you're going to focus on. But because it is such a huge leap, I think it can feel tremendously overwhelming. And again, as you say, that can be a factor as to why people choose the more prescriptive route, at least initially, just to help them with that.
I mean, I can definitely relate to this, Andrea, because when I qualified, I did the DF1, then DCT, and then DCT2, because at the time I thought I wanted to go down the specialist route. And so I was keeping my options open. I was keeping my hand in practice at the same time with a Saturday job, so I wouldn't de-skill. And then thankfully that gave me enough knowledge and experience to know that, okay, I actually don't want the hospital pathway for various reasons. I joked in a lecture the other week that if you had to just convert hospital dentistry into a Disney character, then the sloth from Zootopia, right? It would be that, right? So for me, it was just like, maybe it's the way my mind works. I'm like all over the place. I need to be quick. And so for me, it was like, okay, private practice or practice certainly is the way forward for me. And I'm glad I look back now. I'm glad I had enough insight at the time. And I knew that, okay, this really isn't for me. I could do it. I'd probably be good at it, but it's going to be soul destroying for me to go down that path. Right. And so I felt really confused. I had no idea what to do. Should I join the rat race? Should I do an MSc? I was considering. At the time, I just made a bold decision. Me and my wife moved to Singapore. We worked in private practice there for 18 months. We came back because my wife got homesick, but then I never looked back because it gave me that foot into private practice, and I love what I do clinically now. But that was part of my journey of confusion and figuring things out and doing something bold. And everyone's journey is going to look a little bit different.
Absolutely. But I think you touched on the key point, is that, you kept your options open right at the beginning. So you could gain, maximum amount of information from all of the people that you met. So you could make an informed decision. And I think that's the issue, that sometimes if you don't have the options, you don't know what's out there, then how can you, just like when we tell our patients about treatment options, how can you make an informed decision about your career and your life? It's it's very interesting, but I think that's ultimately been, one of my big passions through the work through the BDA, is to develop their career hub, because it used to just really frustrate me that there wasn't anywhere that you could put all that information in one place about, these are all the jobs that you could do with a dental degree. This is what you need. This is where they're advertised. These are the kind of, routes that you can go down if you want to do X, Y, or Z.
I was just making some note there, Andrea, because it just reminded me that the whole thing, as a parent, as you'll know, they say the days are long, but the years are short. And the other thing that we the reason I mention that is because in dentistry, sometimes you have a really tough day, and we think like really small in terms of the time scale. But if you actually remember that where you're going to be now compared to 10 years time, there'll be a huge difference. Think 5 years, think 10 years. Rather than think just next year, and you'd be amazed. Because if you think that, if I don't make this really important decision now, or if I mess up 1 year, then the end of my career is going to go down the really bad trajectory. That's that's not ideal way to think, because that's not true. You can have a couple of bad years, or a bad year, or a bad few months, but then whatever that means for someone, I think people will be able to relate to what that means for them. But that's not career defining, because our careers are wonderfully long in a good way, and we get to mold it and reevaluate it and reshape it at many checkpoints. Is that something that you think as well? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think, the other thing I'd probably add to that is the fact that, you don't need to achieve these things tomorrow. Like, your career is long. And I think, going back to your question about, the challenges that new graduates are facing, I didn't graduate in an era of Instagram and social media. And I think, there's something called the social proof bias, which is, in the absence of an answer, you do what everybody else does. And I think when we're looking at social media in particular, there are some things that photograph a lot better on social media than others. So obviously, cosmetic, whether it's, composite build-ups or veneers or, smile makeovers, photograph beautifully. Whereas if you have a picture of, a perfectly executed molar endo, it might not gain the same traction. So obviously the algorithm is going to show you certain things. You've also got to remember about the context of the post. Is that there to educate you, or is that there to market to potential patients? And so, it makes me think of this famous equation by a guy called Tim Urban, that happiness equals reality minus expectation. So if you're at dental school and you're seeing a lot of these cosmetic cases, because that is what is coming through on social media, and you think, okay, well, that's what I need to do. So my expectations are that I'm going to graduate and I'm going to be able to do this. But obviously that takes time, that takes postgraduate training, it takes, an all sort of amount of resource. So when you graduate and you're not there, or you think, gosh, like, I'm so far away from that, then your reality is way lower than your expectations. So you're in negative happiness. And I think that's a challenge that certainly I didn't have, but I think I'm seeing that in a lot of new graduates.
Totally agree. And then the next question I had, which follows on so nicely from this, is about stress, burnout, and I'm going to say it's important to address these sensitive matters, but suicide in dentistry. We've lost a lot of colleagues over the last few years, and we have been for decades. And so the net is there been a net benefit of social media in dentistry? I don't know. I think there's so much good I see in social media, but comparison is a thief of joy, right? And so we are comparing, especially now, someone qualifying and they're seeing the work that's been done by someone 10, 15 years, but they forget the journey. They just see their outcome and they think, I need to be able to do this. And everyone's like in this fast paced, and that's maybe keeping them up at nighttime. So social media could be a source of stress and resentment if someone falls into the trap of comparing themselves, right? And comparing where they are compared to where their peers are, for example, which is a dangerous thing to do. Why else do you think we are in a situation where many of us in some of the BDA polls, it was quite striking, the percentages, are feeling disgruntled or upset?
Well, I think that's actually, on the surface of it, you turn around and you go, oh, well, it's because of increased patient expectations. It's because of increased financial pressures. It's because of increased fear of litigation. But I think actually, if we're going to examine this question because we want to improve our well-being and improve reduce the amount of stress that we're under, then we need to actually understand it a lot better and break it down. So you mentioned the BDA's polls. So every year, the BDA, as part of its evidence that it presents to the Doctors and Dentists Review Body, surveys its members. And over the last 8 years, the data has shown that the morale has reduced from about, initially in 2015, it was about 40% of dentists said that they rated their morale as either high or very high. And in 2023, that had kind of gone down to about 20%. So it halved. And what I find really interesting is that back in 2015, about 50% of dentists surveyed would say that they would recommend dentistry as a career. And fast forward to 2023, that's now reduced to about 35, 36%.
Hello, YouTube Protrusive. I know you're watching on YouTube, and I hope you're enjoying this episode so far. But I wanted to highlight, in case you don't know yet, we have an amazing viewing experience on protrusive.app, our website, our network, our platform. So I just want to spend a minute to show you what this looks like. On the left side, you see the navigation, and when you join the app, you get a 1-minute video tour of the entire network. Now, in terms of where the magic happens, that's in the Protrusive community, because you might come for the content, but you'll stay for the community of the nicest and geekiest dentists in the world. We have all these polls, we have a chat group, there's always active chats and dentists helping dentists. And really what I want to do is create a really supportive environment that's not like the environment we have on Facebook, and is built on the values of niceness and geekiness. If you are nice and geeky, you belong here. Now, to make this a safe space, we have a manual process of approval. We actually verify that you are a dental professional before you get in here. So we have hundreds of applicants a day. So if it's been about 2 days and you haven't heard anything, either something's in your junk or you need to reach out. If you're still waiting to join your tribe, email marie@protrusive.co.uk. That's MARI@protrusive.co.uk, and she'll investigate what's happened. Now, all the videos you have on YouTube are also on here, but you actually have some extra ones for free that you don't have on YouTube. So you get some bonus content that's not on YouTube. And actually for the future, I'm not taking things out of YouTube, but some things are not appropriate for the wider public. And I want to sort of safeguard that information, which is like dentist talk, if you like. So that's why a lot of the content is only here and not on YouTube. So you're kind of missing out if you're not on here. That's why I'd love for you to join there. And if you join one of our paid plans, then what you get is access to the CE quiz, like this one, and you can get CPD or CE certificates. And also you get our premium notes. So these are a great aid memoir or revision for an episode to really cement your learning. And whilst we have ads and YouTube places ads on YouTube, we don't have that on our network. So for the paid plan, you get to see all of the premium notes without any of the ads. And of course, you get to support Team Protrusive and help us to continue what we're doing. I'm just going to gloss over the Protrusive Vault, which has all our infographics and downloadables. These are all our masterclasses at this moment in time, and we're always planning to add more. And if you look at it, there's about 1, 2, 3, it's about 7 of them. But actually, if you look at the replay section, some of the live masterclasses that I've done and some of the training that people pay for on other websites is all on there, included as part of the masterclass subscription. And if you're a student, don't fear, we have a special section for you with all the student notes, which anyone can access. So for example, here is one on exodontia. So it's all there waiting for you on Protrusive Guidance. Please head over to the website, which is protrusive.app. Make an account on your browser. This could be Safari, Chrome, however you want to do it. And once you've made your login, then you can download the iOS or Android app and then log in through there. So the reason to make the subscription primarily on the website first is that you get access to a free trial, which you don't get if you do make an account on Android, iOS. If you make it on the website, you get access to the free trial, and you get our best price if you sign up through protrusive.app. So our best deals and free trials are only on protrusive.app. Of course, we always put the link below in the description, and thank you so much for enjoying our videos on YouTube. But it's now finally time to level up your experience. Back to the episode.
So when you look at those surveys and you say, okay, well, what causes you the most stress? Interestingly, for practice owners, like 90% of them said it's increased practice costs. And for associates, it's fear of litigation. And then the list kind of goes down. I think it's, and number 2 is staff, like how easy it is to recruit staff, how, if you're an associate, what's the staff turnover if you don't have the same nurse all the time. And then it becomes like about financial concerns. And then I think number 4 was hitting NHS targets. So we can look at those and go, oh yeah, okay, so that's why dentists stress. But I think it's important to remember that they are external factors. And so with external factors, you're limited as to how much you can control them. Then we've got to look at the nature of the job, which if you're in general practice, it can be isolating. You could be in a big practice, but you could end up working in a bit of a silo if you're not careful, and you don't, if there isn't that kind of culture that, everybody helps each other out and you all work together. Plus, like the huge amount of mental load that comes with the job. I think the fact that, as a dentist, as you said, you're doing all of these things. It's not just the one job. As a self-employed individual, you're the accounts, you're doing the actual clinical work, you're
communications with labs and patients and letters.
Absolutely.
And treatment planning itself, the whole just getting a decent treatment plan when you're conflicting in your mind, like what is the best thing to do, that takes up so much choice fatigue and decision-making skills in your head.
It does. I mean, the list just goes on and on, doesn't it? And I think, the problem is when you're making decisions all the time is that your brain doesn't get a chance to shut off. And then when you leave work, you're still replaying some of those events and decisions throughout the day. So you can leave work, but mentally you're still there. And so when you don't get that level of respite, and obviously you get home and you've got, other financial constraints and pressures, whether that is a mortgage to pay or the kids to pick up, or, we've all, got whatever.
Life, just everything else in life.
Exactly. So, it's really, really fast paced. And I think because we don't get that time to, if we're not careful, to just pause and just, reflect and think, okay, I just need to take some time just to slow down. And I mean, I can't meditate, but if you can, that's great. But whatever works for you, but you just need a time just to kind of slow down. So, and I think also, the kind of people that are naturally attracted to dentistry, we tend to be high achievers, people who, we want to do a great job. I mean, whether we're perfectionists or not, but, we want to do a great job and we want to help people. And so, when things go wrong, as inevitably sometimes they do, they don't work out as well as you'd like them to do. We can take, if you're naturally, I don't want to say a people pleaser, but you want to help somebody, then you can take that failure very personally. So I think that contributes to that. And then we've got, the other internal factors, which are really specific to you. And, that is when you've got, a clash of basically, internal stresses usually come from a clash of values. So that means that your action or your environment is conflicting with what's really important to you. And that makes this kind of internal cognitive dissonance, which you might not spot. You might not even realize that it's there. But over time, it massively contributes to burnout. And so I think, it's your values are a compass as to, where you're going to go in life. And I think sometimes, I meet people that are like, oh no, dentistry is just not for me. And you're like, well, actually, is it? And when you really delve down into it and you look at the kind of things that are causing them stress and draining their energy, you're like, well, no, actually, it's got nothing to do with dentistry. It's just a mismatch between your environment and your actions. So if we can change that, then actually, that will make the world of difference for you.
I think I've never had an episode where my neck is hurting so much because I'm nodding so much. Honestly, like the cognitive dissonance, I talked about this a couple of years ago, right? And I'm so glad you mentioned it again, because I don't want to talk about specific scenarios because it's an international audience, but let's say an example I've used in the past is you go on a course, you learn how to find MB2, okay? And you learn how to find it, okay? And now when you are working and you're like, you don't have much time to do this endo and everything's like rushed, okay? And you know how to find the MB2, but now you don't have the time or the tools to find it. That's a source of stress. That's a cognitive dissonance in itself.
Absolutely.
Or you know that you should be doing things a certain type of way, but because of the environment you're in, you are having to take shortcuts or just something that may have worked in the past for you, but now because you know better or you know different or you want to be a certain way, but you're not able to be your true self, that eats you up inside, especially like you said, for us who want to do a good job. And many of us do love our clinical dentistry and we work in microns and we want to be proud of what we do, but we're not able to do it.
Yeah, I think that you've hit the nail on the head. I think, that there's lots of examples that I can give of that. And it could be something as simple as, maybe, you really value family time, but you're having to work really long hours. So you're having to stay behind because, you don't have enough time to do your notes and your referral letters during the day. And so actually that's a massive conflict of your value. Like actually it's got,
I'm so glad you mentioned that non-clinical one. I'm very pleased. And the other one would be like, you value your health and fitness, but because you're working so much that then you neglect the gym. You have the gym membership, you only go once a month, but you're at your best. You have the most energy when you're going 3 or 4 times a week, but you've sacrificed that for work or for something else.
Yeah, and I think, another example that something I've certainly experienced, and it took me a while to work it out, was that for me, actually, autonomy is really important to me. And so, if I'm working in an environment where I lose control of my list and the reception are putting in patients here, there, and everywhere, for one dentist, that might be, they might love that. They might love the challenge. Whereas I want the day to be separated into, this is when I see emergency patients, or this is when we do this kind of treatment. And if I lose that sense of autonomy, then that causes me a huge amount of stress. So it's about understanding what specifically triggers you. And you only really understand that if you've actually put in the work, which can be quite uncomfortable work, to be honest, as to what is important to you and why.
Hard now is an easier tomorrow, as they say. So with that, let's talk about the final phase, which I'm the most excited for, right? Is let's talk about some practical steps every dentist can take to fall in love with dentistry again, and ensures that it fuels them and it doesn't feel like it's a chore or a burnout, and it helps us to reconnect with why we got into the profession. In fact, actually, that reminds me of, there's a book called Can't Hurt Me, David Goggins, right? And then one of the techniques he uses is you reach into the cookie jar. So he's an ultrathon runner, right? So let's say he's done like 80 miles and he's running and he's getting a little bit tired and he's losing his energy, he's losing his focus, right? He reaches into the cookie jar where he remembers, he searches inside, he remembers a time where he was successful or he conquered something, and he tries to tap into that energy. And something I haven't spoken much about before, but is something I think is relevant to here, is many of us, okay, the vast majority, I think, at some stage when you're doing the UCAS form, for example, Andrea, right? At one stage, you really, really, really wanted this. You really wanted to be a dentist. Like, if you tap back to that energy when you're 18, 19, 25, wherever, how much old you are when in your individual journey, at some stage, you were like, you sleepless nights waiting for the results to come out to find out if you'd become a dentist or not. And that's what you really wanted at one stage. And to remember that and to tap into that energy, and that's our version of a cookie jar to help you, to ignite you to do the hard work that you need to do, like you said, Andrea, to help make sure that you carve a professional life for you that serves you.
Yeah, absolutely. Tapping into that original why is fundamental. But I think also it's important to say that, once you've tried different stuff, that why actually might change a bit, and that's okay. And
that's okay.
And okay.
Mm-hmm. Great. So to share some practical, because I've seen so much practical stuff shared by you on Instagram. Can you share your top tips that you give to your trainees, or you educate on, to make sure that someone listening today can really go away and think, you know what, I think that's a great idea. I can apply these few things to make a big instant difference to my fulfillment.
Well, I think the first thing to say, just because we've touched on stress and tragically increased suicide rates, I think if you are listening to this conversation and you are really struggling, is that the first thing you need to do is you must seek support. And there's lots of support out there. That's Samaritans. The BDA has its a health assured counselling service. Your indemnity provider may have counselling support as well. So if you are really struggling, then there's absolutely no shame. It's, as we've talked about, it's kind of an insane job when you think about it. And so we're all going to go through periods of time where we're not doing too great. And what's important is that, and you access professional support when you need it. When we're if we're just looking at, how can we make life more fun? How can we, improve our life in practice? I think, we've kind of touched on this already. The number one thing you've got to do is get clear on what is it that you like dentistry, what is it that actually does excite you, and then look at how you can do more of it. But to even kind of have these thoughts that we've been having when we were talking about how rapid everything is and how our brains just are going a million miles all the time, I think the number one thing that I would advocate is that you just find a way of stopping. So I can't remember who it was that I heard say this, but basically, if you're looking about even making any kind of change, it could be a small change, it could be a big career change. I mean, who knows? If you're driving a car, you can't reprogram the sat nav while you're still driving. So you need to be able to have time just to pull over. And I'm not saying stop working. I'm saying see if there's a way that you can actually dedicate time during the week and put some real boundaries around it. Like, okay, well, on a Thursday night between whatever, I'm just gonna sit and I'm gonna do some work on this. I'm gonna do some Googling. I'm gonna
protected time.
Absolutely. Create some protective time. If you really are thinking that, you're not actually sure whether dentistry long term is for you, then actually you need to think about maybe just having that protected time, but perhaps even just reducing either a clinical afternoon or a clinical day. But it needs to be, these goals need to be smart. So there needs to be a time specific element to it. Otherwise, we just get carried away and we do other stuff. But if you're like, right, okay, in the next 4 months, I'm going to make a decision about where I want my career to go, or what kind of postgraduate training or what kind of jobs I think I'm going to shadow, or, what I'm going to find out what's right for me. So create
Finding a
protective
mentor
time.
of a certain kind, was giving an example,
Absolutely.
like I want to get a mentor in implants and I need one local to me, could be your main thing that you've identified that's going to help you to go to a next gear.
Yeah, absolutely. But you need these, these things need to be, I would say it needs to be time specific to make sure that you are actually going to do it.
It's human nature, because if you don't have any urgency, then everything else will just fill up and that will get left behind. So I totally agree. You need to have if you actually write down a specific date and a specific time and where you're going to be at that time when you're going to make the decision, then that can be quite a powerful, it just gives you your mind some clarity.
Yeah, absolutely. So having having the protected time to be able to do that is gonna really help you. So we're getting clear on our why. We're creating protected time to kind of go through that thought process and then put in the work of, whether that's, like you say, finding the mentor, doing the Googling, doing the research,
doing the shadowing for maybe some areas that might interest you, that you think, okay, I could pivot my career into sleep, or I could pivot into endodontics, and then actually doing your due diligence and shadowing, because you might decide, actually, that wasn't for me because X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. And I think, for some people, it's if they're in a similar situation to what I was and they like variety, and obviously we get a lot of variety in practice anyway, but if you want variety as in different types of jobs, I mean, I think that dentistry is incredibly unique. Like, I truly believe there isn't a degree out there that gives you the amount of flexibility and opportunity that a dental degree does. I mean, the fact that I do clinical practice on one day and then I might be talking to somebody else on another day, or I'm working on my computer on a project on another. It's actually, when I look at it, it's a bit insane. But and obviously that gives me a tremendous amount of pleasure. But the fact that I can even do that, I can't think of any of my friends that have done other degrees and qualifications that have that level of variety to their week. So, it could be that you think, well, do you know what, actually, maybe I'd like to go and demonstrate at a dental school, or, just do that as a general practitioner half a day a week.
Or even, I'm just thinking out loud here, dental charity work, dental aid.
Absolutely.
Some people have gone into that and they love that. They get so much fulfillment from their career from that.
Yeah, no, there's absolutely loads of things that
business, but the business of dentistry. Sorry. So, some people get a kick out of owning 3 to 4 practices, and then for that reason, they only had to. I read someone from a colleague I really respect. He said, when you get to about 4 practices and you own 4 practices, you really kind of have to think about giving up clinical dentistry, because it's a big ordeal if you're going to manage to a high degree of success. But that might be different for different people. You might still keep your hand in clinical, but certainly you might find that the whole marketing element and hiring and the managerial stuff, you get a kick out of that, and having a vision for your practice and hiring the right associates in your team and building that team. And it's like a project development, that could be your calling.
Yeah, completely. And I think, another thing that we need to do is look at, especially when we were talking about stress, because obviously we're all under stress to some level. Obviously, how much and what that stress is, it depends on you and your individual circumstances. But I think certainly when I was a younger dentist, I would hear this word resilience, and I would think, oh, okay, well, I've just got to toughen up. This is what it is. I just need to keep cracking on, and eventually it might get better. And so there was definitely this misunderstanding between resilience in terms of toleration versus adaptation. And so it's, just if you are finding that, oh gosh, I'm driving to work and I'm feeling it today. It's understanding why it is. And then once you've worked out those specific stress triggers, how can you manage those? If it is the example I gave about autonomy in the diary, it's actually quite an easy one to fix. There'll be some things that are harder to fix, and you might be like, actually, no, this is not the right environment for me. I need to change environments. But again, it's getting clear about what it is that's specific to you that causes you stress and anxiety, and then coming up with a manageable plan as to how you can either adapt to it, or ultimately, if you can't do that, then remove yourself from that. And the final bit of advice is, actually, no, there's 2. There's another one that's just come into my head. So
Good.
Community. Community is such an important part. And obviously, you've built this incredible, community. through Protrusive. But you've really got to find your tribe. And it's not just about finding a community online. It's about finding people who you can pick up the phone to, you see face to face, who understand what it is like to be doing your job. Because dentistry is so unique. It's very hard to explain it to somebody who's not a dentist that what the realities of the job are and why it is can be very challenging sometimes.
I just want to give an example of that, Andrea. My wife, she's a dentist. She's a community dentist. She's now pivoting into private practice, pediatric private practice. She's got an MSc in peds. Massive imposter syndrome. Like, she's being kept up at night. She's having this huge imposter syndrome, and I'm saying, Sim, you're going to be absolutely great, you're going to be fine. But then I got her in contact with the Dental Mums Network. It's a new network that's been set up, and she's going to their inaugural conference in a couple of weeks' time, which I think is wonderful. That's like she's finding a real in-person event, the magic of in-person. It can't be replaced. And she's going to go there, and one of the talks is all about imposter syndrome, and these are really high-achieving women in dentistry that's going to inspire her, and to find that source of inspiration from, and then look at online as well, but look beyond and find local as well, and be willing to travel or pick up the phone to find that tribe. Totally agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just one example of the many of these groups, and I'm seeing more and more spring up, which is just fantastic. It's the issue I would say that you just need to be aware of is that if it's only like yearly or couple of, twice a year that you're going to these conferences, see if you don't have a local network, see if you can build that. See, the BDA have branch and sections events. There'll be local dental councils. There's lots of things that you can get involved with. And also, by having that element of community, it's not just about support, it's about career opportunities as well. If I think about, because we're such a tiny profession, really, that the nature of many jobs don't even come to the online boards. So to find out about these kind of, whether that's in practice or these other kind of weird and wonderful opportunities that come along, you need to have a strong network in order to be able to access them or even know they exist. So community really is key. The final thing is that you need to enjoy the journey. And I think, going back to what we were saying about tick boxing, it's so easy to kind of steamroller down this road of, I'm going to achieve this, or I'm going to get this qualification and then you get it, and then you're like, okay, what's next? Let's go. And actually, you have what you have achieved just to even qualify or graduate as a dentist is amazing. Like,
it's huge.
You have to be able to, if you're looking at the next mountain, you have to look at the mountain you're already standing on. And I think we can be quite bad at that sometimes. And just going, oh, actually, if you'd shown my 18, 19-year-old self who I am, it's going to blow their mind. But it's having that kind of realization that, well done you, like just having that bit of recognition for yourself. And it's not even just looking at the big things. I would say, if you're in, just one of the massive things that'll make a difference to you in practice is looking at your micro wins. We all get really focused on, oh, I don't think that prep went as well as I don't think I'd got the angle of this, or like that could have been better. And like we become super self-critical. And actually you're like, no, what did go right today? What difference have I made to the people? I got this person out of pain. Or it could be something, really simple. But just by taking a moment to think about, actually, I make a difference on a daily basis. And so, what a privilege, what an amazing privilege that is. And, I think that really is kind of the message that I keep going on about, is that we are in such a privileged position. We have this incredible degree. We have incredible qualifications. And, so many people don't have that privilege. And so the last thing we want to do is not utilize it and, not be happy. Because ultimately, if you're happier in what you do, then that doesn't just affect you, it affects the people you live with, definitely. But it impacts your patients. I mean, there's a growing body of evidence to say that happier clinicians have better outcomes. So it's vitally important. It's essentially, life is short. Let's not waste it. let's think about things, give some intention as to what we're going to do with our career and our lives, not just for ourselves, but for those around us as well.
I'm applauding. I love that. That was fantastic. I can't wait to share this with everyone, Andrea. I'm just going to I guess, round it off by saying I agree that this is truly a phenomenal profession. But if you're feeling at this moment in time that, hey, actually, it's not feeling like a great profession, everyone's saying that, oh, there's so much flexibility, then you've cornered yourself in. You need to embrace the difficult period of either discovery or action taking massive action, picking up the phone, writing an email. The worst thing you could do is just be stagnant and watch the entire world collapse around you and not do anything about it. One thing I have been good at over the years is taking it by the scruff of the neck and making brave decisions and key decisions and sending those emails and having that conversation with my principals, wherever it could be, to make sure I carve out the life by design and by choice and not wait for things to happen to me, i.e. being proactive. Okay. And that's so important. Andrea, how can we learn more from you? How can we reach out to you? How can people send you a box of chocolates and flowers for the mood that they're in right now?
The easiest way is, if you want to send me stuff, that's I'm sure we can provide some form of address. The easiest way to contact me is actually through Instagram at Dr. Andrea Ogden. Then you can find out everything you need to know about me and the one-to-one coaching that I do.
Excellent. So you're doing coaching and you're sharing so much on Instagram. So I highly encourage everyone to follow Andrea. I'm going to put her link in the show notes. Thanks for helping us to fall in love with dentistry again. I think it's so important to we do so much CPD on various aspects, cosmetic stuff, composite stuff. This is the important CPD right here, reminding yourself how to get out of a tough spot, how to re-engage and feel reinvigorated from your career. This is an annual exercise, every monthly exercise, okay? And so this is so important. And thanks for helping us put this together, Andrea.
Oh, it's been my absolute pleasure. It's been so lovely to talk to you. Thanks for having me.
You as well, Andrea. Thank you so much. Well, there we have it, guys. Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end. Look, sometimes when you are given advice, you enter like paralysis or choice fatigue and you don't know what to do. Listen, just do one thing. Pick one technique that Andrea talked about or I talked about in the intro and implement it. Maybe that's going to be writing down what your ideal day and ideal week looks like. Even if it's so far from what your reality looks like at the moment, if you actually put pen to paper in some protected time to actually discover what does your ideal day and ideal week look like, and then for the next few years or few months or wherever your time scale is that you choose, you relentlessly chase that, my friends. And feel free to share it. If you're on Protrusive Guidance right now, put it in the comments or start a new community post. We're all friends here. It's a safe space and we'd love to hear from you. This episode, by the way, is eligible for CPD or CE credits. Protrusive Education is a PACE-approved education provider, and now CP credits are valid all over the world, including US, Australia, New Zealand, you name it. We have two main plans. Like if all you have time for is the podcast and that's where you want to get the CE for, then we have the podcast plan. But if you also want to access all our masterclasses that we have and some of the best dental webinars you've ever seen, I promise you, you will never laugh so hard and learn so much from these webinars that we have. And that's from our ultimate education plan. So you can choose your protrusive flavor. I've put in the show notes, by the way, how to get in touch with Andrea and our Instagram link. If you like this episode, please let her know. We need more people like Andrea in the world. And you know what? We need more people like you in the world. Thank you so much for reaching all the way to the end. It shows that you're dedicated. It shows that you really want to make a difference for yourself, for your loved ones, and for your career. My friends, I'll catch you same time, same place next week. Bye for now. And of course, thank you so much, Team Protrusive, for behind the scenes, all the hard work they do. Bye-bye now.